of the class of 2015. If we might have a round of applause for those fathers. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce and induct our 2015 Academic Hall of Fame of inductee, Mr. Clyde Peeling. When we met as a committee to decide upon Clyde Robert Peeling's induction into the Muncy High School Academic Hall of Fame, it definitely took us longer to read his accomplishments than it did to make the decision for his induction into our Academic Hall of Fame. It is our honor and privilege to have Clyde here tonight as our inductee and graduation speaker for this class. Clyde Bob Peeling, as he was known in Muncy, was born in 1942. Raised on a farm just outside of Clarkstown. Bob, as he was known to his families and friends, was always a dreamer as a kid. He started with the dream of a circus with his best friend Dick Williamson and his brother Don, along with a host of other youngsters from Clarkstown. His next dream was that of a Wild West show after reading Buffalo Bill in his preteen years. That same best friend from Clarkstown introduced Clyde to his first garter snake, and shows at the Lycoming County Fair intrigued a young Bob even more about snakes and reptiles. This, along with many other experiences as a youngster from Clarkstown, focused Clyde Peeling's dream of owning and operating a reptile zoo. As a student at Muncy High School, Clyde had some teachers and some counselors that did not believe in his reptile zoo dreams, but he had a few that did, such as Evelyn Yeagle and Stan Schuyler. Bob also occupied his time on Sundays in high school at his very own reptile garden in Clarkstown, where you could see a boa constrictor, Chinese dragon, alligator, and poisonous snakes. I'm also told that he made his biology class in high school quite interesting by the guest appearances of his reptiles on Friday. Clyde graduated from Muncy High School in 1960, and after a brief time exploring parts of our country and visiting many reptile exhibits and zoos across this country, he enlisted in the Air Force, where he would remain until 1964. Clyde was trained as an air traffic controller and focused in on one of his other dreams while in the Air Force, that of flying. Clyde left the Air Force in 1964 and quickly purchased 4 acres of land on Route 15, which would be the home of Reptiland for over 50 years now. Like any beginning business and zoo owner, the early years were difficult, but Mr. Peeling was living his dream. Reptiland was originally opened from Memorial Day to Labor Day. The harsh Pennsylvania winters were difficult for housing reptiles and were strained financially. To make ends meet, Clyde had to go on the road during the winter months, lecturing to students in schools across America. He took his reptiles with him, keeping them hydrated in motel bathtubs. He had a few mishaps with snakes escaping into heating vents, and he had some reluctant citizens unwilling to help him after an accident in Tennessee because he had an alligator trying to escape from the back of his station wagon. That will cut down on good citizenship. The growth of the business was slow, but it survived by pure determination. The determination paid off in 1986 with Reptiland becoming fully accredited by the American Zoological Association. That accreditation continues every 5 years, and Reptiland remains one of the few small, privately owned zoos that continue that accreditation effort. Clyde has probably had more media exposure in his career than any other Muncy graduate. He's appeared on The Jon Stewart Show, Regis and Kathy Lee, Late Night with Conan O'Brien, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, Real Life with Jane Pauley, The Today Show, and ABC's Wide World of Sports. That's not bad for a boy from Clarkstown. Clyde has had the privilege of living his dream of owning and operating a privately owned zoo with his family, which includes his wife Diane, 2 sons, Chad and Elliot, and a daughter, Whitney. Long before the release of the hit movie We Built a Zoo, Clyde Robert Peeling could say he built a zoo right here in rural central Pennsylvania. So ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to the 2015 inductee in the Muncy High School Academic Hall of Fame, Mr. Clyde Peeling.
They're going to call you Tim tomorrow, so I'm going to say thank you, Tim. Congratulations to the class of 2015. Unlike you, I spent all 12 years in this building. And like you, I had a lot of really wonderful teachers, too numerous to mention, but I will ask your indulgence to just tell you about 2 teachers that taught at Muncy High School who have been pivotal in my life. About 1988, I was perusing the Dinosaur Hall of the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, and a young man approached me and he said, "Are you Clyde Peeling?" And I acknowledged that I was. He said, "Well, I grew up and I went to high school in Michigan, and I had a teacher that occasionally used you as an example of somebody who had a childhood dream who actually brought the dream to fruition." I said, "Well, who could that be? I don't know anyone in Michigan." And he said, "Her name is Evelyn Yeagle." I tell you, Evelyn Yeagle was my business teacher when I went to school in this building. I was the only boy in her class, which wasn't all bad. I was not an exemplary student, but for whatever reason, Evelyn liked me, and she continually encouraged me. She was a proponent. I think she probably, every test she ever put together, she had some problem in there which involved my reptile zoo. She knew how to pander to me. And by the way, I probably wouldn't have passed a lot of those tests had 1 or 2 or 3 of those girls in the class not helped me cram the night before. But Evelyn gave me confidence. She made me believe that I could do what I wanted to do with my life. And when I left this building, it was pretty much the end of my formal education. Anything I got from there on, I got the hard way, which I don't recommend. I met a man about 1960 who owned a zoo in Louisiana, and he subsequently invented some exercise equipment called the Nautilus machines. And by 1985, he was, according to Forbes magazine, the 400th richest man in the United States. And I used to go visit him every time I went to Florida. And one day, he took me over to visit an old animal dealer whom had extended credit to my friend Arthur when no one else would. And the animal dealer was not doing well. He had fallen on hard times. He was dying of emphysema. And Arthur was taking care of him. So we walked in, and the old man was sitting at the kitchen table, hooked up to a bottle of oxygen. And he looked up at me and he said, "You go to college, boy?" and I acknowledged I had not. He said, well, neither did Arthur and me. We went to the school of HN. I thought about that for a second. Guys, you mean the school of HK? Arthur said, we didn't learn much. Well, I too, I guess I would have to say I went to the school of HN. And one thing I have learned over these many years is the more educated I become, the more I realize I don't know. Charles Darwin once said, ignorance begets confidence far more often than does knowledge. Well, when I started in business 51 years ago, I thought I knew quite a bit. I had confidence. And I'm here to tell you, I'm much more humble today. I certainly realize that there's much more to learn than I'm ever going to get into this skull of mine. So, back to Evelyn for a moment. She instilled confidence in me, and I just wanted to add that evidently, like many good teachers, she did the same for other students. That young man who approached me at the American Museum of Natural History is today in the same business I'm in another state. Purely a coincidence, I don't think Evelyn knew a garter snake from a garden hose, but she knew how to instill confidence. The other thing I think I've learned going to the School of Hard Knocks is I have to get my notes. Is to be a skeptic. You know, if you spend a lifetime with people telling you snake stories, 90% of which you know are false, you become a skeptic. And over the years, I've become skeptical about many, many things. If somebody tells me something that sounds too good to be true, I am very skeptical, and I have found through life that in most cases, they aren't true. People say, well, you don't have an open mind. Well, I think I have an open mind, but as someone once said, it's okay to have an open mind, but not so open that your brains fall out. I said there were two teachers at Muncy. I mentioned Evelyn. Well, a decade after I graduated from this high school, I met a young woman named Diane Mabb. I found her attractive. We began dating. And I was soon to learn that she was then teaching language arts at, of all places, Muncy High School. She had formal education I didn't have. She went to Drew University and Columbia University in New York. She was well-read, musically talented, loved to sail. She had a lot of the things that I didn't have. She smoothed out my rough edges. And she has been a proponent. She too has given me the confidence to keep going. And we had a very successful breeding program. We produced 3 wonderful kids. And that's kind of zoo terminology. But all 3 kids and Diane have always been supportive. 2 of our kids are in the business. Our daughter is in the publishing business. She's an entrepreneur in Philadelphia. They're all hard workers, smarter than their old man. And it takes more than just a family to make a small business work. And I have to give credit to many friends and employees that have helped me at Reptiland over the past 51 years. I've lived my dream. I built my zoo. I've done a lot of things I wanted to do. I've done over 5,000 programs to schools and colleges throughout the United States. I've flown airplanes most of my adult life. I've led over 35 safaris to Africa and Asia, South America. And in each of those pieces of my life, there have been memorable moments that I'll never, ever forget. But I have to tell you, being honored here today and being inducted into the Hall of Fame is one of those moments I'll never forget, and I thank you very much.